And joining us for a hot copy today, we have the petitioner against the Mandaluyong Ordinance, Attorney Dino De Leon. Attorney De Leon, good morning.
Good morning, Karen, and to all our viewers.
All right, well, clearly this is a victory for you. And looking back, what made you actually want to file the case? Because many
Karen,
people have been caught before, and clearly they just paid the fine and just went to work, but not you.
Karen, I was dissuaded by a lot of people from pursuing the case because, you just have to pay the fine. It's 2,000 pesos. And then my filing fee alone for the regional trial court was close to 5,000 pesos. When we lost in the regional trial court, and to me, that was a bit expected, we had to file another separate filing fee to the Court of Appeals. And then the city tried several times to negotiate and say, okay, we'll no longer fine you, just withdraw the case. But I said, this is a matter of principle already because a lot of people have been apprehended by the local government unit of Mandaluyong. And I've seen that mostly the people are the poorest of the poor. Because they're the only ones who mostly take motorcycles or ang angkas application while they're going to work, while they're going to their certain activities. So I said that this must stop. I tried to negotiate with the city of Mandaluyong to just repeal the ordinance, but they wouldn't budge. So that's why I said, as a citizen, it is our obligation to fight through the courts.
Okay, and did you expect to win in the Court of Appeals?
In the Court of Appeals, yes, because the arguments in the pleadings that we've submitted were very clear. And this is a very clear violation of the Equal Protection Clause. Can you just imagine that without citing any data whatsoever, males are being prevented from taking motorcycles? It is important before government can restrain our movements and our liberty, so to speak. The government must justify its actions because the discretion of the government is never unbridled. It must be able to justify its actions towards its citizens, especially if the activities or the behavior of the citizens are not innately harmful. So it's not innately harmful. It is the onus is with the government to show that in fact the measures that it is taking is actually very necessary to protect public welfare. In this particular case, they did not show any data, which is why I was quite confident that the Court of Appeals will do the right thing, and that is to prevent this arbitrary intrusion on the people's liberty.
But what's quite surprising is you saying that the city of Mandaluyong didn't show data to support it. No less than PNP Police Chief Guillermo Eleazar, in a speech, said in the first 3 years of the Duterte administration, the crime rate in Metro Manila has dropped by 58%, and he attributes that partly to the 2015 Mandaluyong City Ordinance prohibiting riding in tandem. So that was not presented? Nothing was presented in the regional trial court by the city of Mandaluyong. I don't know if they were they were overconfident, number one. Number two, this was just stated in the whereas clauses of the ordinance itself. But there is no study. I can just say that crime rates went down, and that started when I practiced as a lawyer back in 2015. Is it attributable to me? No, you have to have a particular study, and such correlation cannot just be drawn automatically. What they have to show as well is that male riders have more propensity to become criminals. But in the ordinance itself, it stated that most of the perpetrators of riding in tandem crimes have escaped the wheels of justice. So how were they able to determine the sex of those people who were not apprehended, and if the majority actually got away with their crime? So they cannot just rely on broad generalizations and hasty conclusions. It is the obligation of the government to show actual data and actual studies. They cannot just assert, because the government has awesome powers. Usually in jurisprudence, it is called the awesome powers of the state. Faced with a person's liberty, it is the duty of the state to justify its actions through studies. And they could have easily done that if they really have basis, so to speak. Now, Attorney De Leon, clearly you argued a better case. There's no debate on that because you won. But the reality is when the Mandaluyong City Council
agreed to this ordinance or voted for this ordinance, there was a rise in crimes brought about by riding in tandem in the city. In other words, they didn't make this ordinance just out of the blue. So how do you balance then peace and order challenges by those running the city and basic human rights?
Well, we all want a safe city and a safe country, Karen. No? But always we have to remember that the actions of government must be balanced with the fundamental rights of the people. Just to put this in context, Karen, based on in a 2019 data that we got, there have been apprehensions on this riding in tandem policy, and the number of apprehensions is around 65,778. Per my last information, informal information, they've apprehended close to 100,000 already. 100,000 people, you multiply that by 2,000 pesos. The city of government has exacted close to 200 million pesos worth of penalties from the poorest and of the poor.
Yeah. And that's a fact. That's a fact. The number now is 200 million.
Close to 200 million. You can verify this with the city of Mandaluyong. But in 2019 alone, 65,778. And they still implemented this ordinance. So close around 200 million pesos exacted from the poorest of the poor. The question then becomes, why is it that innocent people are the ones being penalized just because of isolated actions of criminals? In other words, us innocent people, us citizens, should not be penalized just because there are criminals out there. It's as if the criminals are still able to commit their crimes, while us people, ordinary people going to work, are the ones bearing the brunt of the actions of these criminals. So if you really want to strike the perfect balance, A, the state must be able to justify its actions. B, show that they've exerted all efforts to make society safer and each and every citizen safer. And number three, they should not inconvenience people and penalize them arbitrarily just because of their sex. In other words, government should be more intelligent in thinking about policies to make people safer and not just assert and already categorize males as automatically criminals or have the propensity to become criminals. All journals and academic studies do not show any correlation between crime and sex. In this case, they made that particular nuance. And that is unacceptable for regular citizens such as this.
And I think what's quite surprising with the numbers you just quoted is those penalized with 2,000 pesos are those who may not be able to afford to pay 2,000 pesos as a penalty, which is why they're already in riding sa angkas. Kaya nga sila maangkas, walang sariling kotse.
Karen, yun nga yung nakalagay doon sa pleading. These are the people who can't afford more posh ways of commute. These are the people whose time is very valuable because they have to juggle 2-3 jobs. Such as myself, when I was still riding the angkas, I had 3 full-time jobs, which is why I take angkas because I don't want to be stuck in traffic for 2 hours, 3 hours, or falling in line in the MRT for an hour just to be able to catch a train. What's the point? The point is, it's as if the poorest of the poor are not being understood by the city of Mandaluyong. And instead of providing them alternatives, they're making it more difficult and costly for them to survive every day without empirical basis. So the 2,000 pesos is just unacceptable. You will be surprised, Karen. So it's around 200 million pesos worth of illegal exaction based on an unconstitutional policy. And you will be surprised. A lot of people have been messaging me and they were saying, Attorney, how can I get my 2,000 pesos? Sometimes 4,000 pesos because they've been caught again. And this is very important to me, to us, because sayang rin yun. Hirap na hirap akong kinita yung pera kong yun. That was my salary for 14 days, 15 days. And then they just got it and I didn't have a choice.
Well, clearly you are now the advocate on this. A quick question, Attorney. Have you found out where the city of Mandaluyong has actually spent the 200 million pesos that's roughly been earned by penalties?
Not yet, Karen. But the accountability of the city of Mandaluyong is not just this around 200 million pesos. They've inconvenienced a lot of people and they made them suffer sleepless nights and other forms of damages. No, so we intend to pursue this. And the city of Mandaluyong and all local government units out there should be reminded that they cannot just implement arbitrary policies because people, citizens will push back against an oppressive policy and they will have accountabilities. So that's the reason why I personally wanted to pursue this and force the local government unit to pay up, because they cannot just exact millions of pesos from ordinary people, especially if it's based on an unconstitutional act that is completely oppressive.
You've heard the Mandaluyong City Mayor. She said that the ban has been suspended, but the city refuses to return all the fines. What will make the city return all the fines?
Well, I am a bit disappointed with the Mandaluyong city leadership, because the first one is, if it's unconstitutional, clearly, and they've exacted millions of amounts of money from ordinary people, clearly they should have the moral obligation to return it without any prodding. But number two, it appears now that they will prevent the wheels of justice, so to speak, from actually taking its usual course. That's why we have to take them to court once again. But rest assured that ordinary citizens, will actually fight for their rights. This is a little bit costly for me too, based on time, money, effort, resources. But it must be done, because our leaders must be held into account for their, frankly speaking, very stupid policy making. It's very stupid without any empirical evidence, and it must be called out by the people.
I'm curious, as the Mandaluyong City Office takes this to the Supreme Court, do you have private citizens that are supporting you even more now after the victory?
Moral support, Karen. They say, good job, thank you for doing this, for fighting for our rights. I just tell them, I'm just a regular citizen who's doing what I can. This is my fair share in fighting for the rule of law in our country. And then I just ask for their prayers. As a practicing lawyer.
What will you be spending as this goes to the Supreme Court?
Well, of course, I'm the petitioner, but I have associate lawyers who I pay to do the research. I have an entire office, the filing fees, the papers, my time. But that's okay. I'm a practicing lawyer, so I have means. So that's not a problem for me. So in terms of resources, I think as a private citizen, I can afford that. But I was very much discouraged already when this was dismissed in the regional trial court. Litigation is not an easy exercise in the country, and if the case is already dismissed, and you will still have to undergo a lot of hearings, a lot of pleadings, it's cumbersome. But precisely because this measure was really, really unjust, we had to continue, and we're really determined to continue until the Supreme Court. I would urge the city of Mandaluyong to think twice whether or not they want to appeal this to the Supreme Court, because all law students in the world will see their actions, or particularly in the Philippines, in their actions, and will study how stupid of a policy this is without any empirical basis. If they're prepared to be remembered by posterity, then by all means, they should actually elevate it to the Supreme Court.
Okay. Attorney De Leon, I'm curious, just in terms of a city's interests, would you consider the policy stupid because fines were implemented with the ordinance? Because I'll give you another example that a viewer has asked. What about the policy that when you ride a motorcycle, you both need helmets? Now, clearly, obviously, it's a safety measure, but then you're also fined.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a big difference between requiring people to wear helmets or seatbelts from that of preventing two males from riding a single motorcycle. In the first one, most accidents and deaths are already clearly established, are suffered by people who are not wearing helmets. In this case,
in other words, there are numbers. There's empirical data.
Correct. There's empirical data to show that there are more deaths caused by the non-wearing of helmets. Here, no data will show you that males are the only ones who can commit criminals while riding a single motorcycle. Women can do it too, Karen. You can ride a motorcycle and snatch somebody else's bag. Why is it that just because of my gender, automatically I'm suspected to have a bigger propensity of committing crimes? There's just really no link whatsoever. No data will support that. This is sexist. It is unacceptable. It's arbitrary and capricious act on the part of the city of Mandaluyong.
Okay, I'm curious connecting this now to some IATF regulations in terms of in the past not wearing shields and masks. This is following the Court of Appeals decision. Do you then believe that some of the IATF regulations actually violated basic human rights?
I saw so many comments in the reactions of the people, even motorcycle riders being required to wear face shields, which endangered them while driving the motorcycle. But specifically for face shields, there's no empirical proof whatsoever that it works, which is why we're the only country in the world that does this. And then you get penalized. Sometimes you are incarcerated. It's so ridiculous. At the very least, what this case should show is that the government's actions are not unbridled and its discretion is not absolute. It is always accountable to the people. And at the very least, we should require our policymakers to base their actions on data, on empirical evidence, not just on their wild feelings every single day just because they feel like they want to do something. That is not leadership. What that does is actually promote bad governance and inconvenience to the people, and in fact does not provide genuine solutions to the perils that we are facing at this particular point in time.
And you're seeing, Attorney De Leon, that this victory, and when it's taken to the Supreme Court, will set a precedent with other issues and cases and even ordinances that city governments actually implement.
Especially, Karen, if they will be required to pay up. Imagine 200 million pesos that they've probably spent already. Ouch. And these penalties must exist for stupid policies, especially since they've inconvenienced 75 to 100,000 people. They must pay up. And in fact, if the city of Mandaluyong wouldn't elevate it, I'll probably elevate it because it is in my prayer that the money should be returned. And that was not addressed by the Court of Appeals. So let's see. We are now studying further the remedies available to us as citizens. But rest assured that we will fight this with utmost vigor and advocacy.
Okay, clearly that the city will be filing for a motion for reconsideration with the Court of Appeals, correct?
With a motion for reconsideration first with the Court of Appeals before they elevate it to the Supreme Court.
Okay, but in terms of you requesting the city to return the money, what legal remedies do you still have with the Court of Appeals? Or do you believe that's already, you'd have to take it to the higher court?
Well, we can institute a motion for reconsideration. You know, that is also a strategic move that the city of Mandaluyong should take into consideration. Once they are the ones who file a motion for reconsideration, the Court of Appeals can open up all issues and say, we forgot, you pay up to 100 million pesos. We can also move for reconsideration in the Court of Appeals, or we can file an independent action for damages, or maybe mandamus with the local government, with the regional trial court. So we're still contemplating the remedies available to us. They are numerous. So the city of Mandaluyong should actually prepare.
But then would you really want to file an independent case with the regional trial court again?
My philosophy there, Karen, when I file cases is this is not a spectacle or for media show only. It is our collective duty to make sure that our justice system would work. So whether or not we are disillusioned with the regional trial court, we have to make it work. So we have to fight on the proper forums. And to me, when I file cases, for example, on the president's health before, of course, a lot of people will say the Supreme Court will never force the president to declare the status of his health. But to me, it is important for us to fight for our justice system and to make it work. And even if they will have an adverse ruling, at the very least, a citizen tried to make justice work. And it is a constant battle to fight for our justice system. And it takes us citizens to assert our rights. So yes, I would do it again in the regional trial court because there are judges who will do what is right. I've experienced this already in the case of Teacher Ronel when we filed a motion to quash in the Regional Trial Court of Olongapo City. So there was a brave judge who said, you know, the NBI has done something bad, and they cannot tolerate such kind of oppression of the citizens' rights. So just because there are adverse rulings of some regional trial courts doesn't mean that we should lose faith altogether with the justice system, even in the trial court system.
Clearly, you are used to this David and Goliath situation. In your own personal life, where is this coming from, attorney?
I've been a victim of crimes before, and I've always yes, it is my sworn oath as a lawyer to actually try to make justice work. That was my training back in law school. I was part of the first batch of the LSU College of Law, and our oath is, or the goal of the law school is to promote human rights and environment. So that was ingrained on me when I was since I was in law school. So I said I will do my fair share of fighting for the people's rights.
All right. On that note, Attorney De Leon, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you and good luck to you.
Thank you, Karen, and good morning to everyone.